Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. A young mother who never believed her husband would take her life. Manipulation is a type of social and psychological influence where one person seeks to change another person's perception and behavior for their own interests. Manipulators typically follow similar patterns, resorting to deception, blackmail, and moral or physical abuse. Often, their methods can be so intricate and cunning that the victim doesn't realize they are acting in the manipulator's interest. This frequently happens when the victim is in love with the manipulator and trusts only them. The case of Maria Fernanda Quesada was classified as femicide, a deliberate crime against a woman by a man. The most horrifying aspect of this crime was that it was entirely predictable, and those close to the girl considered the tragedy just a matter of time. Maria herself was afraid of her abusive husband, but loved him and wanted to keep the family together for the sake of their children, so she gave in to his manipulation. She blindly trusted her partner and did not sense danger when he invited her to a fateful meeting. Maria Fernanda Quesada. Childhood, family, and early years. A girl named Maria Fernanda Quesada was born on June 18, 1994, in the town of La Garita, located in the Guanacaste province in northern Costa Rica. She was the only child in the family, and her birth was a true miracle for the Quesada couple. Maria's mother had been treated for infertility for many years, and doctors had given up hope, claiming she would never have children. However, despite all the forecasts, she managed to conceive and gave birth to a healthy child. Her parents showered her with love and care, striving to protect her from all troubles and provide her with everything she needed. From a young age, Maria dreamed of having a large family with brothers and sisters, but her mother's health prevented her from having more children, so Maria remained an only child. The girl then decided that she would one day create a large, happy family of her own and have at least 3 children. The Quesadas worked hard and, by the standards of their native province, were considered well off. They aimed to give their only daughter the best education possible and fostered the development of her talents and abilities in every way. The family lived in a spacious, cozy home, and Maria had the opportunity to study music and attend art school. Maria had warm and trusting relationships with all family members, but she was especially close to her maternal aunt. Her mother's younger sister was only 6 years older than Maria, so they grew up as close friends, sharing secrets and being almost inseparable from a young age. Quesada excelled in school, had a creative nature, and was passionate about painting and sculpture. Those around her described her as a kind, bright, empathetic, and friendly person, always ready to lend a hand. She always had many friends, easily connected with people, and was very attractive. Single mother. At 18, Maria started dating a boy she had known since school. Their relationship developed quickly. The young man seemed reliable and loving to Maria, but everything fell apart when she told him she was pregnant. The young man, who was her age, was completely unprepared for family life and raising a child. He immediately suggested she terminate the pregnancy, and when she refused, he declared that their relationship was over. Maria was devastated, but still hoped that after the baby was born, the father would change his mind and come back. However, by then, her ex-boyfriend was already seeing someone else and wanted nothing to do with the son he had fathered. Maria's main support came from her parents and aunt, who helped and financially supported her and her son. The young mother knew she couldn't rely on her relatives forever and needed to provide for her son on her own. She began looking for ways to earn a living, wanting her work to bring her joy. Soon, she discovered online lessons on soap making and crafting decorative candles from wax. Being a creative person, Maria was drawn to this activity and saw great potential in it. Maria threw herself into making handmade candles and soap, selling her products online. She created social media groups to advertise her goods and took individual orders for custom candles and soap tailored to customers' specific preferences. Her business quickly gained momentum, her social media following grew rapidly, and with it, so did her orders. She continuously improved her craft, aiming to become a top-notch artisan, and dreamed of saving enough money to open her own shop. Meanwhile, Maria also started teaching online soap-making classes, earning a decent income. She continued to live with her parents and son, saving for her own home, and dreamed of getting an education. A frightening suitor. Maria worked hard, but she never stopped dreaming of meeting a worthy man with whom she could build a strong, happy family, someone who would love her growing son as his own. Her loved ones shared this dream, but when she brought her new partner into their home, they were filled with anxiety and fear for her future. In the fall of 2017, Quesada went to the city to buy supplies for making soap and candles. While she was shopping, a charming young man named Esteban Vargas approached her. He paid her a few compliments, saying he was captivated by her beauty and couldn't resist coming over to introduce himself. Esteban seemed polite and genuine, quickly charming Maria and earning her trust, so she agreed to take a walk with him and have coffee. After a brief conversation, Maria gave him her phone number, marking the beginning of their unexpected romance. Esteban was 12 years older than Maria, but she didn't see the significant age difference as an obstacle to their happy future. She fell in love with him from the day they met, though it was a mystery to those around her what had won her over. Vargas was the complete opposite of Maria. He was harsh, rude, constantly used foul language, and had many bad habits. But most importantly, he never spoke about his past. Officially, he didn't have a job, but he had substantial savings that many suspected were obtained through dishonest means. Esteban owned a firearm, which he kept in the glove compartment of his old pickup truck. He rarely parted with the pistol, but never explained why. Maria suspected that her lover might be connected to the criminal world, but she was too afraid to ask him directly. She also knew nothing about his past relationships. About 4 months into their relationship, Maria decided to introduce Esteban to her family. She was very nervous about her parents' reaction, and it turned out she had every reason to be. Esteban behaved provocatively, was rude, used foul language, and any questions or remarks provoked anger and sudden outbursts. He openly frightened Maria's parents, and as soon as he left their home, they began urging their daughter to break off the relationship, fearing for her safety. However, Maria was not just in love. She was truly blinded by her feelings and refused to listen to any arguments. She naively believed that her love, care, and support would help her lover manage his fits of rage, that he would eventually calm down, settle, and become a good husband to her and a caring father to her son, as well as to the children they would have together, which she longed for, a family like his. A couple of weeks after meeting Quesada's parents, Esteban decided to introduce Maria to his family. He invited her to a family dinner at his mother's house, but the event turned into a nightmare for Maria. The Vargas family members were just as hot-tempered, aggressive, and arrogant as Esteban. They used foul language, communicated loudly, and any argument could instantly escalate into a fight. They treated their son's new love interest with disdain, making derogatory remarks, and even comparing her to his ex-girlfriends. They didn't like that Maria already had a child from a previous relationship, and they made no effort to hide their feelings. Maria held back tears of hurt and humiliation with all her might. To make matters worse, Esteban's relatives also had a fondness for strong drinks, and when intoxicated, they became even more aggressive and unpredictable. Maria found them cruel and malicious, a sentiment she candidly shared with her parents. Her father and mother once again tried to convince their daughter to break up with Esteban and stay away from him and his family. However, Maria remained adamant, believing that things would settle over time, especially since Esteban tried to behave himself when she was around. A hellish marriage. In December 2018, Maria told her partner that she was expecting his child. Esteban was not overly thrilled by the news, but he agreed that it was time for them to make their relationship official. The couple got married on April 6, 2019, when the bride was 4 months pregnant. They had a beautiful wedding with a white dress and a beachside ceremony. After the wedding, the newlyweds moved into a small house owned by Esteban. But from the very first days of their married life, he began to show his true colors. He no longer held back his outbursts of rage, threw tantrums over nothing, and didn't hesitate to use his fists. Insults, beatings, and humiliations became routine in their home, all witnessed by Maria's 5-year-old son. For several months, Maria not only endured all this, but also kept it secret from everyone. She avoided visiting her family so they wouldn't see the bruises on her face and body, wore long sleeves even in the heat, and carefully concealed the marks around her eyes with makeup to avoid attracting neighbors' attention. However, she grew increasingly fearful for the life of her unborn child and worried about how this situation would affect her older son. Maria believed that after the baby was born, Esteban would soften and fatherhood would do him good. She endured daily abuse, accusations, and humiliation, all while Esteban skillfully shifted the blame onto her, reminding her that he had accepted her with a child that no one else wanted. He expertly manipulated her emotions, knowing that the woman in love wouldn't leave, understanding how to frighten her and make her comply. Quesada was terrified of being alone again, this time with 2 children, and this became Esteban's primary lever of control. However, shortly before the birth, after another brutal beating, Maria hastily packed her things, took her son, and fled to her parents. They were shocked by her appearance, as there wasn't a single unmarked spot on her body, and urged her to go to the police, but she flatly refused. Caring father. In the last few weeks before giving birth, Maria lived in her parents' home, still hoping that the birth of her child would improve the situation, so she was in no hurry to file for divorce. Her family was less optimistic and urged her to end the marriage as soon as possible, but she wouldn't listen. On August 11, 2019, Maria gave birth to a son, and she immediately informed her husband by phone. Esteban rushed to the hospital within 15 minutes, looking happy yet bewildered. He got on his knees, begging his wife for forgiveness, pleading with her to return to him, and promising that everything would change now. Maria believed him and went home with the children after being discharged. It's needless to say that Quesada's parents were shocked by their daughter's decision. They understood that this was just a ploy and manipulation by their son-in-law, but Maria refused to listen. It all ended in a major argument, with Maria stating that if she had to choose, she would choose Esteban. Her parents didn't want to spoil their relationship with their only daughter or lose the chance to see their grandchildren, so they had to accept her decision. For the first few months, the new father did spend nearly all his time with his wife and newborn son. He surrounded them with care and even took on some household duties. However, he treated his stepson with a cool detachment. The stepfather didn't mistreat the boy, but it was evident that he was uncomfortable interacting with the child, although he tried not to show it. Moreover, Esteban officially got a job, and it seemed like he was doing everything for the well-being of his family. Maria couldn't be happier, as everything was now unfolding exactly as she had dreamed, but her happiness was fleeting and short-lived. Nonetheless, this brief respite even made Maria's relatives reassess their opinion of Esteban and believe that he had indeed changed for the better. Under one roof with a monster. The family idyll lasted precisely 1 year, but shortly after celebrating their son's first birthday, Esteban seemed to snap. All the anger, rage, and cruelty that he had been suppressing burst out, turning their home into a real torture chamber. He mercilessly beat his wife, broke several of her ribs, and nearly deprived her of an eye. In terror, Maria fled to her parents, who once again begged her to go to the police, but she refused. A few days later, Esteban came, apologized, and asked her to return home. To everyone's astonishment, Maria agreed, explaining that she still believed in her husband and hoped they could return to their previous happy life. Over the next few months, Maria repeatedly ended up in the hospital with serious injuries, but she always blamed everything on ridiculous household accidents to avoid involving the police. Neighbors regularly heard screams and shouting from the couple's house and even witnessed the man beating his wife. However, Maria always begged them not to call the authorities. People in the area were afraid of Esteban because they didn't know what to expect from him and feared he could attack at any moment. It wasn't until November 2021, when the situation reached a breaking point, that Maria, fearing for her life and the safety of her sons, contacted the police. She could no longer live under the same roof as a tyrant, manipulator, and outright sadist, so she moved back into her parents' home with her children. Moreover, she managed to obtain a restraining order against Esteban, prohibiting him from approaching her and the boys. Quesada documented the injuries, and doctors recorded numerous bruises, contusions, and abrasions of varying stages of healing on her body, indicating systematic and brutal beatings. Her relatives, as well as neighbors, confirmed that Vargas regularly assaulted his wife and threatened her with harm. As a result, the court forbade him from approaching his wife and contacting their child without her consent. However, the restraining order didn't deter Esteban, who regularly showed up at Quesada's house. He would wait for Maria to step outside and insist on talking, but she would always rush back inside to avoid him. Eventually, she only left the house accompanied by relatives, fearing an attack by her husband, a brutal attack and child abduction. Maria filed for divorce almost immediately, and now the couple faced a complicated process of dividing their assets and deciding custody of their son. She filed a lawsuit for domestic violence, supported by medical reports documenting her injuries and witness statements from neighbors and relatives. She hoped this would help her gain sole custody of the child. It was clear that Esteban had his own plans, and on March 3, 2022, despite the court order, he came to the house of his still legally married wife's parents. He looked completely calm, behaved politely, and asked to speak with Maria. Her parents tried to turn him away, but he was persistent. A few minutes later, Maria herself appeared at the door and agreed to talk to him privately. It's unclear what exactly Esteban said to her, but he was very convincing, and Maria agreed to go with him to their shared home to settle some issues. Moreover, she took their son with her because Esteban convinced her that he missed the child and wanted to spend time with him. Her parents were adamantly against their daughter and grandson going anywhere with this dangerous man, but Maria assured them that nothing bad would happen. She took the child, got into Esteban's car, and that was the last time her parents saw their only daughter alive. The couple started arguing in the car. By the time they reached their house, Esteban was yelling and using foul language at Maria, as witnessed and overheard by the neighbors. The couple, along with their young son, entered the house, where the situation escalated. The shouting didn't stop, and soon it was accompanied by loud crashes, as if furniture was being broken and dishes were being smashed. Then came the sound of a child crying and Maria's desperate call for help. Neighbors called emergency services, and a man living across the street rushed over to help. As he approached, the front door flew open, and Esteban appeared on the threshold, covered in blood. In one hand, he held the crying child, and in the other, a blood-stained knife. His gaze was wild, and his face twisted in rage. The neighbor backed off, fearing for the boy's life, while Vargas jumped into the car and sped away at high speed. When the police arrived, they found the mutilated body of a young woman with no signs of life. Maria lay in the kitchen in a pool of her own blood, with multiple stab wounds. Blood splatters were everywhere, on the walls, furniture, and even the ceiling, indicating the extreme brutality of the attack on the victim. Forensic experts counted 11 stab wounds on the deceased's body, most of which were concentrated on the upper torso and hands, which she had used to shield her face. It seemed that Esteban had attacked her from behind, catching her by surprise. This was evident from the 3 wounds in the neck and shoulder area from behind. Maria likely tried to escape, but her husband caught up with her and continued to stab her in the chest, head, and hands. Her body was found lying on its back, with the final stab wounds inflicted near the heart. Search for the criminal and the abducted child. There was no doubt about who had dealt with the unfortunate woman, but where was the criminal, and where did he take the child? A few hours later, Esteban's abandoned car was found on the side of a deserted road. Inside were traces of blood, and on the floor lay the weapon used in the crime, bearing the man's fingerprints. For obvious reasons, the criminal decided to get rid of the car, which had been declared wanted. He could have hitchhiked, taken a bus, or stolen another car. However, the options of public transport and hitchhiking were quickly dismissed because the man was in bloody clothes, which would have undoubtedly raised questions or suspicions. Most likely, he stole a vehicle to escape. An emergency manhunt was launched, as the police had strong reasons to believe that the criminal would attempt to cross the border into Nicaragua with the child within hours. Alerts with photos of Esteban and his young son were sent to all border checkpoints, and by evening, the fugitive was apprehended. The criminal had even managed to find a clean shirt somewhere, but bloodstains from the victim remained on his jeans and sneakers. As expected, he tried to leave the country in a stolen vehicle with his young son in the car, but he was arrested at passport control. The man did not resist and immediately asked for a lawyer. A gun belonging to Esteban, with his fingerprints, was also found in the stolen vehicle. Crime investigation. The crime was initially classified as femicide, a crime against a woman due to her gender, which is considered a particularly serious offense in Latin American countries and is usually punished with life imprisonment. All the evidence pointed to Esteban: the bloody knife with his fingerprints, the blood stains on his clothes, and the neighbors' testimonies confirming that besides him, Maria, and the child, no one else was in the house. Moreover, the investigation revealed that the man had previously been charged multiple times for assaults and causing bodily harm. However, the only eyewitness to the crime was a 2.5-year-old boy. So, the criminal and his lawyers adopted a specific strategy. Esteban claimed that Maria had attacked him, and he was only defending himself from an enraged woman, panicking and grabbing the knife. The man argued that he didn't even remember how he inflicted the wounds and only realized what had happened when his wife fell silent. At the same time, the Vargas family tried to tarnish the deceased's reputation, calling her a bad mother, a terrible wife, a troublemaker, and unfaithful. The defendant's relatives claimed that Maria provoked Esteban, attacked him, and this ultimately led to the tragedy. They did everything to portray the criminal as a victim of circumstances. The lawyers insisted that the greedy Quesada family intended to take all his property and deprive him of the chance to see his son. During the investigation, it was even necessary to exhume the body of the victim, who had been buried a week after the crime. Independent experts refuted Esteban's and his defense's claims that Maria had attacked him first, once again confirming that the first 3 blows were inflicted on her from behind. Trial and sentence. The trial of the criminal began only in March 2023, meaning the defendant and his lawyers had plenty of time to build a convincing defense. However, various activist organizations fighting for women's rights supported the Quesada family, joined by crowds of people demanding just punishment for the criminal. The deceased's eldest son, who was 9 years old at the time, could testify in court and spoke about the stepfather's cruel treatment of his mother. The younger child, who witnessed the crime, was only 2.5 years old at the time. Psychologists worked with him and determined that the boy had a deep-seated fear of kitchen knives, screaming, "Daddy, don't," whenever he saw one. The child mentioned that his father had hurt his mother and that everything turned red. These materials were submitted to the court, but the child was not brought into the courtroom to avoid further trauma. Numerous witnesses, including neighbors, relatives, and acquaintances, testified against Esteban, recalling how he had shown aggression toward his wife at various times. Dozens of people had also regularly seen bruises and contusions on the young woman's body, and shortly before the start of the divorce proceedings, the police had documented signs of beatings. On May 15, 2023, Esteban Rivera Vargas was found guilty of the premeditated crime against his wife and sentenced to 36 years in a maximum security prison. Custody of the deceased woman's 2 children was granted to her relatives. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel. There are many shocking stories ahead of you.